So let's look at the XSLs. So if I look at the all blogs, you'll see that down at the bottom, you'll see something very similar to the JSP, but now implemented as a transform technology. So you can see I match the root of the incoming data, and based on that, I write out a page in XHTML format, and that's new with XSLT 2.0. You can see I define my output method of this style sheet to be XHTML, and you can see I say in that XHTML, I want the same kind of format. I want it to look the same as what the JSP did, but now I directly navigate the XML data right within the transformation technology. So you can see that it's saying for all blogs, where did blogs come from? This is again a new XSLT 2.0 functionality, much improved, that I define a variable that selects from the incoming data all the entries that had a .blog dash substring. That was the same XPath that we saw in the XPath example. What's new here is that this is a temporary tree and it's navigable in the XSLT data model. So I do that as a variable that I can easily refer to later. And you can see that for each one of those blogs that's returned out of that XPath, I write out a row in the table, and you can see I'm writing out the value of this interesting function call, which I'll show you in a second, which uses the ID. And you can see that I'm writing out for each one of those blogs the title. This interesting function is yet another valuable new function in XSLT 2.0. You can see that it's my just blog ID. If you looked at the Java implementation for the XPath, you'll see that I wrote a lot of logic to process whether it was the sentinel value of all ones and do something special in that case. And I also did some parsing of the data that came back because the blogger put some data within a text field that is really a concatenation of a couple data fields. And what this function does is emulate both of those, but do it in a true XSLT function. So I don't have to go back to the Java code to do it. You can see that the function I defined, again, an XSLT 2.0 idea that you can define functions right in XSL. I name it just blog ID. I say it has a parameter of full blog string. And another interesting 2.0 functionality in XSLT is that I can say as attribute, and this says it's a string. This means that if someone passes me something that's not a string, it's going to try to convert it. If it's something that's not convertible, you try to pass a date to an integer or something along those lines, you're going to get errors, and you're going to get compile time errors, static errors that are really helpful in trying to create high quality XSLs. So it just takes this parameter called full blog string, and then it does a choose statement, much like a switch statement or an if then else in your Java programming model. And when the profile ID is all ones, it's going to return that the blog ID is all ones. That's the way that we handle the sentinel value. And you'll see lots of Java code to implement that same sort of functionality that I can do in a simple when statement within the XSL. And then the next part, and this again shows some more XSLT 2.0 functionality, you can see when it contains the blog dash field that it uses a new XSLT 2.0 functionality and analyzes the string. Analyze the string is a regex expression. So it says that string will start with tag, have blogger.com, 1999, user. There'll be a data field here, .blog dash, and another data field. And it's returning what the blog ID is. So we return out of that any regex string that matches, we return the second grouping, which would be this field. So it returns just the blog ID of that long string. And it, in the case where it's a sentinel value, it'll always return the blog ID as all ones. So we can make sure that we stay to our fake data as opposed to going back out to the Blogger service. And in the end, what this produces is it produces this form. Search comments, very much similar, but with a little more integration. You can see that the all comments XSL does something very similar. It uses the exact same XPath that the XPath example used, and it stores it into a variable, a temporary tree called comments, and then it writes out a HTML form, all questionable comments. Some interesting new XSLT 2.0 functionality that it uses here is it uses grouping technology. So there were some very ugly ways to do grouping in XSL 1. One of the things the group realized was it was pretty important to make that easier to do in XSLT 2.0. And you can say for each group of comments, grouping by the name of the author, write out who the author was for the current group, and if the group is greater than 2, the count of the current group is greater than 2, so there's been 2 questionable comments posted by that author, we're going to bold the author's name, and you're going to see that in a second. But the ability to do very easy grouping, in this case grouping by the author's name, is a much improved functionality in XSLT 2.0. The other thing that's in here is each comment has a date on it, and you can see that I'm using format date time, which is a new function in XSLT 2.0, to make a very nicely formatted date and time. Again, in XSLT 1.0, that would have just been a string, and you would have to go to proprietary extension functions to do the formatting. Another interesting thing to show is, again, much like an XPath example, I have integrated in custom Java data, so you can see that there's my vulgar words again, and you can see that I've integrated in existing logic that's defined in Java functions, my legacy content analysis. And in the context of running this style sheet, it's going to go back and it's going to look at what I defined is going to exist, and it's going to look at what I bound into the execution. So I bind in the actual data here for the vulgar words and for the how many months you want to search, and I bound in the actual function call to be called. And as part of this execution, it's not only be writing to the output and displaying the output to the browser. As part of that, it's also going to be calling to my Java logic as well. And hopefully this lets you see how to use XSLT 2.0 in an end-to-end application, and how there are many things within XSLT 2.0 that make it much easier and much more productive to use it as a transformation technology as compared to XSL 1.0. Thank you.